Marcus believed hard work solved everything. That belief shaped almost his entire adult life. He arrived early, stayed late, answered emails during vacations, took overtime nobody wanted. Managers loved him. Co-workers respected him. But strangely, his life never seemed to move forward. At 38 years old, Marcus still felt financially fragile. Every month looked identical. Salary arrived. Bills consumed it. Stress returned. Then the cycle repeated again. Marcus kept telling himself the same comforting story. If I just work harder, eventually things will change. But deep down, he had started noticing something uncomfortable. Many people working less than him somehow earn significantly more money. At first, he blamed luck, connections, privilege, rich parents. Anything except the possibility that his entire understanding of success might be incomplete. One Tuesday night, Marcus sat alone inside his car outside the office parking lot. It was almost 10 p.m. Rain slowly covered the windshield while the office lights reflected against the glass. Marcus stared at his own tired reflection, then laughed quietly. Not because something was funny, because something suddenly felt absurd. He had become incredibly skilled at helping someone else become rich, but not himself. And somehow, that realization hurt more than exhaustion itself. The strangest part, Marcus was considered the responsible one among his friends, the disciplined one, the mature adult. Meanwhile, his former college roommate, a guy who once sold homemade t-shirts online while eating cereal for dinner, somehow spent Wednesday afternoon surfing in Portugal. Marcus used to laugh at him. You can't build a future working from coffee shops. Apparently, you could. And that thought irritated Marcus more than he wanted to admit. Because somewhere deep inside, he already knew the truth. The problem was never effort. The problem was direction.
Marcus used to think he was ambitious. Now, he suspected he was simply surviving. There was a difference. Real ambition creates growth. Survival creates repetition. And Marcus had unknowingly built a life entirely around maintenance. Wake up, commute, work, recover, repeat. Every year looked slightly different on the calendar, but emotionally, nothing changed. The strange part was that Marcus always looked busy. Modern society rewards visible busyness. People admire exhaustion, praise sacrifice, romanticize overwork. Marcus once bragged about sleeping 4 hours a night. Now, even his body seemed embarrassed by that memory. One afternoon, a younger coworker asked him, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Marcus opened his mouth, then realized he had no answer. Because he was so focused on surviving each week, he had stopped designing an actual future. That realization unsettled him deeply. And maybe that was the most dangerous part of burnout. It slowly shrinks your imagination until survival starts feeling normal, until exhaustion becomes your personality, until being busy replaces actually becoming someone. Marcus suddenly realized something terrifying. He had optimized his life for productivity, not freedom. Marcus had mastered productivity. Unfortunately, productivity was not the same thing as progress. He optimized everything. Faster emails, better schedules, more efficient workflows. but none of it increased his actual value. That truth remained invisible to him for years because corporations often reward obedience before creativity. Marcus became extremely efficient at tasks that kept him replaceable. And the frightening part, he never questioned it. Like millions of people, he confused movement with direction. One evening, Marcus opened social media and saw former classmates living completely different lives. Some started businesses, some built online income, some developed rare skills. Marcus immediately felt defensive. They got lucky. But another voice quietly appeared inside his mind. Or maybe they simply spent more time developing themselves than exhausting themselves. That thought disturbed him deeply because Marcus suddenly realized something painful. For almost 15 years, he had invested more energy into improving company profits than improving his own capabilities. And the worst part, he genuinely believed that was responsible adulthood.
For years, Marcus believed exhaustion meant he was doing something important. Now, exhaustion simply felt sad. His body hurt constantly. His attention span shortened. Even weekends no longer felt restful. They became emotional recovery periods before another stressful Monday arrived. Marcus noticed something strange happening. He had stopped becoming curious. Books felt difficult. Learning felt tiring. Creativity disappeared. Work consumed all his mental energy, and whatever remained afterward barely felt human. One night, Marcus sat alone, eating takeout directly from the container, while scrolling through videos he wasn't even paying attention to. Then, suddenly he paused. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because he realized something horrifying. He no longer recognized the person he had become. Somewhere between responsibility and routine, everything changed because of a sentence Marcus almost ignored. One evening during his commute home, he randomly clicked a video featuring Jim Rohn. At first, Marcus barely paid attention. Motivational advice usually sounded repetitive. But then, Jim Rohn said something that immediately cut through years of confusion. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Marcus sat silently on the train. The sentence sounded simple, but emotionally, it hit him harder than expected. Because suddenly, he understood the real problem. For years, Marcus focused almost entirely on labor, not development. He improved effort, but neglected value. And those are not the same thing. A company can always replace labor. Rare value is much harder to replace. That realization changed how Marcus viewed nearly every decision in his life. For the first time, he stopped asking, "How can I work harder?" and started asking, "How can I become more valuable?" That single question quietly changed the direction of his future. Marcus did not quit his job. He did something far more important. He changed how he spent his remaining hours. Instead of collapsing mindlessly after work, Marcus began rebuilding himself slowly. At first, the changes seemed insignificant. 30 minutes of reading, learning communication skills, listening to audiobooks, studying sales psychology. But something surprising happened. Marcus started feeling mentally alive again. Curiosity returned. For the first time in years, he felt like he was expanding instead of merely surviving. Even his conversations improved. His confidence improved. His thinking improved. Coworkers started reacting differently around him. Because personal development changes more than income. It changes energy.
and people unconsciously respond to that energy. Marcus finally understood why self-education feels powerful. Nobody can permanently control a person who continues growing independently.
Months later, Marcus noticed something fascinating. The world began responding differently to him. Not because he worked harder, but because he became more valuable. He communicated more clearly, solved problems faster, understood people better, and eventually, opportunities appeared naturally. Freelance projects, consulting offers, leadership responsibilities. Marcus realized something most schools never properly teach. Income often follows perceived value, and value grows through continuous self-development. This was not overnight success. There were still difficult weeks, still uncertainty, still self-doubt. But Marcus no longer felt trapped, because now he possessed something more important than motivation: adaptability. He was slowly transforming from dependent worker into capable individual. And emotionally, that changed everything. Before Jim Rohn's quote, Marcus believed confidence came from external success. Now he understood something deeper. Real confidence comes from knowing you can adapt. That realization reduced much of his financial anxiety, because Marcus no longer depended entirely on one paycheck. He had skills, knowledge, communication ability, and those things travel with you everywhere. Previously, work controlled his identity. Now work simply became one part of a much larger life. Marcus started protecting his energy differently. He slept better, exercised more, spent less time seeking validation. Ironically, once he stopped obsessing over appearing successful, he actually started becoming more successful, because desperation disappeared, and people can always feel desperation. Eventually, Marcus understood something most people misunderstand about financial freedom. The formula was never only about money. Money was simply the side effect. The deeper transformation happened internally. Jim Rohn's advice forced Marcus to stop viewing himself as a tired employee waiting for rescue and start viewing himself as a human being capable of continuous evolution. That shift changed everything. Because when people improve themselves consistently, their decisions improve, their relationships improve, their opportunities improve, even their standards improve. Marcus realized self-development is not motivational entertainment. It is economic survival for the modern world. Technology changes, industries collapse, jobs disappear, but adaptable people continue finding ways forward. And perhaps that is the hidden meaning behind Jim Rohn's formula. The greatest investment will always be the person making the decisions. Years later, Marcus still worked hard, but now his hard work had direction. That changed everything, because effort without growth creates exhaustion, but effort combined with personal development creates transformation. Marcus eventually understood something simple but powerful. Many people spend decades trying to increase income without increasing the person earning the income. And perhaps that explains why financial struggle repeats across generations. People inherit survival habits, but rarely inherit personal development habits. Jim Rohn's formula changed Marcus because it shifted responsibility back into his own hands. Not society, not employers, not luck. Him. And strangely, that responsibility felt liberating instead of heavy. Because once Marcus realized he could intentionally improve himself, his future stopped feeling fixed. Maybe true financial freedom begins the moment people stop asking, how can I work harder?
and start asking, how can I become more valuable? Because the world eventually pays for value, but it rarely rewards exhaustion forever.